Now let's talk about early influencers, the people who inspired me to become the person I am today. I want to start with my grandpa Duncan. He was an amazing man. As soon as he finished his 5th grade classes, he hitchhiked to Joplin, Missouri, and then hopped on a stowaway on a freight car, where he rode from Missouri to California to work in the oil fields, all with a 5th grade education. Upon his return, he became a successful commercial real estate investor, the owner and operator of a popular restaurant or lunch counter, a politician, and all this with a 5th grade education. He also took up gardening as a hobby. Every inch of ground around our home was a garden, front, back, side, and other side. Wichita was growing fast and quickly becoming the air capital of the world. Beechcraft Air was there, Cessna was there, Learjet was there, and Boeing was there. All had their primary manufacturing there, as well as their headquarters. Grandpa speculated on undeveloped areas, successfully picking and investing in future high-potential real estate growth. He sold them for a handsome profit after they appreciated. This gave him the capital to pursue other interests. He was a restaurateur. It was popular mainly as a lunch counter. He owned and operated it, and it was successful and very popular. Customers were especially fond of his fresh sandwiches and soups. A large dill pickle, the pickle of which had come from his cucumbers in his garden. He prepared everything himself. He took Sundays off to be with his grandchildren. He prepared the same restaurant food, sandwiches, and soups for us. And we got to experience firsthand why customers flocked to his place of business. Next, he was a local politician. He campaigned for a number of local political positions. He was elected county treasurer. He ran several times for county commissioner, but never won. I remember telling him, even though I was a child, that his main problem was that the state of Kansas was a very conservative Republican state, and he refused to run on any other ticket other than the Democratic ticket. I enjoyed working with him on his campaigns. None of the other grandchildren were invited to do that. I felt special. I passed out yard signs to people in neighborhoods after attaining their position. I passed out campaign leaflets in shopping centers, parking lots. I rode in his 1957 Buick with a microphone and speaker installed. And as we drove through neighborhoods, I grabbed the microphone, and shouted out, "Vote for Charlie Duncan for Sedgwick County Commissioner." He introduced me to John F. Kennedy in 1960, when Kennedy stopped in Wichita to make a campaign speech. I still remember Grandpa standing right next to him on the stage. My grandparents received invitations to the inauguration and the inaugural ball. They were not able to attend, but it was an honor just to have been invited. Harry Truman was also a friend of his. They were both Missourians. They attended annual Democrat National Conventions together, and I accompanied him to television stations on election night to watch the returns come in. I listened and learned as he was interviewed by local television and newspaper reporters. Even though it was a hobby, he became a great gardener. He grew vegetables and flowers. He planted front, back, and side of the home. There was no grass. Every side of the home was plowed up and made into a garden. Every inch of his yard. He grew fruits, vegetables, and flowers, most of which he gave to friends, relatives, and passers-by. He never charged anyone for any of his fruits, vegetables, and flowers. He grew red long-stem roses and other beautiful flowers. My grandmother always brought me a bouquet of a dozen red roses on every birthday. She knew how much I loved flowers, and I still do. Grandpa was a great role model and provided examples for my life ahead. Another important influencer was my Uncle Richard. I've already mentioned him once. He helped with our audition. He was my mother's older brother. He was a decorated war hero in World War II. He served primarily in Belgium, where he manned a .40 caliber anti-aircraft gun, shooting German aircraft out of the sky. He was a very strong and skilled carpenter. I'm still amazed when I think about him pounding a large nail into a 2" by 4" board with a single swing of the hammer. His muscular arms were great. This is well before nail guns, electric nail guns were used. After the war, he became a successful businessman. He was a general contractor and landed a federal contract to restore and renovate FHA repossessed homes, preparing them for resale. He was a great family man. He was the father of 9 children, and he had a wonderful sense of humor. For example, my family and I were there on his property and in his house on a Saturday one day, and it came time to think about having dinner. And Uncle Richard said, "I'm thinking about cooking hamburgers on the grill for dinner." And the kids all started whining. No, we don't want hamburgers on the grill. We want McDonald's hamburgers because they're flat." My uncle just smiled and said, "I can make my hamburgers flat." I cooked them on the grill, and then I spread them across the driveway and drive my truck over them. They'll be as flat as any McDonald's hamburger. The adults all laughed a belly laugh over this, while the children stopped complaining. Now I'd like to talk about my grandma Emily. She was my mother's mother. She's not only an influencer to me, but also one of my favorite people of all time. She worked her fingers to the bone as a tenant farmer before moving to Wichita when the war broke out. She went to work at Boeing, helping to build airplanes for the war effort. A genuine Rosie the Riveter. When Grandpa Emily opened a barber shop, she laundered and soiled linens every evening so they would be fresh and clean for the next day's business. She did this daily to save money because less often she would have had to use more resources. In spite of limited funds, she purchased and gave Christmas gifts to all 21 of her grandchildren. Everyone received a gift. Sharon and I cherished Grandma's gifts. In Christmas of 1969, the first Christmas we were together as a married couple, she gave us a set of wood candle steak knives. Those steak knives still grace our dinner table every night, and that was from 1969. One year she gave me a gold-colored tie tack with a diamond. It was very stylish. She adored Sharon, and so did everyone else in the family. Grandma loved to play cards, but she had very tiny hands and could not shuffle her own cards. She especially loved playing card games like Pitch, which many of you may not have heard of, but it was a Midwest card game. Call for your partner, Tripoli for pennies. Finally, we bought her a battery-operated shuffler. That got her back into the game. She was thrilled. She read movie tabloids constantly and had a habit of calling actors and actresses by their first names only, which amused all of us. For instance, she called Marlon Brando Marlon. John did this for John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe for Marilyn Monroe, and Grace for Grace Kelly. She spoke as if they were their best friends. She was her best friend. She related stories as if she heard them directly from them. Actually, she had gotten these stories out of the movie tabloids, which meant that they could or could not be true. We all, including Grandma, chuckled about this. She knew she was being foolish. She was a hoot. She kept us laughing. When something startled her, I'll take an example, like when Jane Mansfield got a divorce. She said, "Well, For Crying in a Whisper, or my favorite was Rats on Roller Skates. That was her way of expressing indignity. Next, I'd like to talk about my Uncle Charlie. He was actually the hero of everybody in my mother's side of the family. He was her youngest brother, and he was the only person to have ever attended college and graduated with a degree, which allowed him to work in corporate America. When I was a junior in high school, he served as an Army officer in occupied Japan. He was also mayor of Littleton, Colorado, and he worked as a business executive at Martin Marietta, the company who made Titan missiles, who were equipped to carry nuclear weapons. He lived in a lovely, expensive new home. He drove a new luxury car. He dressed for success, and he had a beautiful wife and family. Bingo! This is exactly what I hope to do. No other family member had even experienced college. So when I was a junior in high school, I asked my Uncle Charlie for advice on classes I should take in my junior year to prepare myself for college. He recommended Latin because it's the root of all languages and would increase my vocabulary. And he also rooted for typing, which was something I would need to type many papers in college classes. I was an excellent typist. I went on to take secretarial training. I was the only boy in the class. Everyone else were girls. The teacher excused me of taking the class only to meet girls. That was not true. I wanted to become a great typist, and I did become a great typist, typing 70 words a minute on an IBM Selectrix typewriter. Finally, I want to talk about my Aunt Phyllis. She was my mother's youngest sister, only 7 years older than me. She treated me like a younger brother. She took me to see horror films. We were both big fans. Just the two of us. Things like Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, The Haunted House. She also took me on dates with her boyfriends, to see newly released horror films. I sure hope the boyfriends enjoyed horror films. I rode in the back seat of the car and made sure he behaved himself. She invited me to attend church with her, and she taught me about the importance of having Jesus in my life. I was extremely lucky to have grown up in a city where my entire family lived. They were all excellent role models, coming from good Kansas stock. All four of my grandparents were still alive, and I had a lot of interaction with them. My aunts and uncles lived there as well. 31 cousins lived there, and many of them became playmates as well as cousins. My grandparents were a tremendous influence on me. I visited them every Sunday afternoon. I celebrated holidays and birthdays together, recognized how much they influenced me at the time. I pledged to provide the same to my future grandchildren when that time came. My three sons, who lived in another state, but at least lived in that same other state, only about 200 miles apart, were starting to have grandchildren. We lived in a different state, 1,300 miles away from them. In 2013, Sharon and I moved to be close to our sons and their wives. Our daughter-in-laws were all pregnant. The grandchildren were almost there. I looked forward to demonstrating the correct values and behaviors for motivating them to do their best. Children do not always remember what you said to them, but they always will remember and imitate what you did. My grandchildren have witnessed my key behaviors, which are as follows. I don't smoke, and I never have, and never will. I don't drink hard liquor, and I never have and never will. I don't cuss, swear, or use the Lord's name in vain. I place God and family over work. I treat women with kindness and respect. I compliment everyone, even strangers. I remember everyone's names. It makes them feel that they are special and know they are wanted, and that I value their friendship. Now I want to tell you about two school teachers who literally transformed my life. I would be a very different person today if it weren't for these two gracious teachers. Miss Fark was my fourth grade teacher. When I entered the fourth grade, I was unable to read. I couldn't read a word. Miss Fark noticed that that was the case with me. There were 3 other children in the class who also couldn't read, and they had gone through the same first through third grade teachers with the same problem. They had been placed in the lowest reading groups. They had been passed along for someone else to deal with. Miss Fark stayed after school and brought our reading levels up to the 4th grade. There was no extra pay involved, or no benefits, or no praise. She did it because she cared. By the end of the school year, I was reading at grade level. I thanked her later on for her selfless act. Mrs. Anderson was my Algebra 2 teacher, but the school administration messed around with the advanced math classes, and instead of going to Algebra 1, they decided it should be 3-dimensional geometry. This was a debacle. There were no textbooks. The teachers had not been trained or educated on 3-dimensional geometry. We learned nothing about algebra that year. Mrs. Anderson also noticed that we had a group of people, all special math students, that didn't know about algebra. So she taught us algebra for the first 9 weeks of the school year, and then switched textbooks and taught us the Algebra 2 curriculum for the remainder of the school year. It was a good thing we were all advanced math students, because we were able to learn algebra and Algebra 2 at this fast pace. It was as if geometry, 3-dimensional geometry, had never happened. I could never have earned a college degree without Miss Fark and Mrs. Anderson's transformative efforts, let alone a college degree in engineering and math. They were both great teachers who cared about me and my students.